You may have recently heard President Trump say that there will be no tax on Social Security. At first glance, that sounds like a major win for retirees and seniors relying on fixed incomes. But is it true? What does the new law actually say, and who does it really help? There's a lot of confusion being spread, some of it even intentional. So today we're going to break everything down and explain the real truth behind these claims. If you rely on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or any form of benefit, this information is essential for your financial future. Welcome to Social Security Post, the channel that breaks down the truth behind Social Security, Medicaid, SNAP, and other critical benefits. If you find this video helpful, please take a moment to like it and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another update. And most importantly, if you have any questions about your benefits, whether it's Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or Medicaid, please leave them in the comments below. We'll do our best to respond to every one of you. Now let's get into the facts. President Trump has repeatedly gone on record saying that there will be no tax on Social Security. This isn't something he just said in passing. He's stated it at rallies, on camera, and even read it off teleprompters during official events. He's grouped it with other bold promises, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and allowing interest deductions on American-made cars. These statements have sparked a wave of confusion across the country, especially among retirees and working-class families who are trying to understand how this impacts their tax bills. What makes this particularly concerning is that he continues to say it even after the passage of the bill where this supposed promise was expected to be included. Many voters take these statements at face value, assuming they reflect current law or policy, but the truth is, there is still a tax on Social Security for many people, and the bill that was passed does not eliminate it. Instead, what was included is a partial tax benefit, but not the sweeping tax elimination that was promised. That distinction matters a lot, especially when planning your finances in retirement. So what does the new legislation actually include? The short answer is a $6,000 tax deduction, not a full exemption from taxes on Social Security income. This deduction is meant to offer some relief to certain seniors, but it falls far short of what many Americans were led to believe. Unlike what Trump claimed, there is no language in the bill that eliminates taxes on Social Security benefits altogether. The phrase, no tax, is simply not accurate when you examine the bill closely. This $6,000 deduction works like any other tax deduction. It reduces your taxable income by that amount, which may lower the amount of tax you owe, but it does not erase your tax burden entirely. If you're in a tax bracket where your Social Security income was already being taxed, this deduction might help a little, but for most people, it won't mean a full tax break. And for others, especially those already paying little or no income tax, it won't make a difference at all. That's a huge gap between promise and reality. Now, here's something that many people don't realize. Not everyone qualifies for this $6,000 deduction. In fact, the benefit is specifically targeted at seniors who are either 65 years old or turning 65 within the same calendar year. So if you're currently 64, but your birthday falls later this year, say in December, you would qualify. But if you're 63, even if you're receiving Social Security early, you would not qualify until the year you turn 65. This creates a very narrow window of eligibility, leaving out a significant number of beneficiaries. For example, people who started collecting Social Security at age 62 or 63 won't benefit from this tax deduction until they reach the qualifying age. And if you're receiving SSDI or SSI and are under 65, this deduction does not apply to you either. The rule is strictly based on age, not on whether or not you're receiving benefits. That's a critical point that's been lost in the headlines and political speeches. One of the most dangerous misconceptions being spread right now is that anyone receiving Social Security will no longer pay taxes. That simply isn't true. A large number of Americans who are on Social Security, especially those who claimed early, do not meet the age requirement for this deduction. Even though they are getting Social Security income, they are still subject to the same tax rules as before. This creates widespread confusion and, unfortunately, false hope. It's incredibly important for viewers to understand that receiving Social Security income does not automatically qualify you for this deduction. The media and politicians have made this sound like a universal tax break for all retirees, but in reality, it's only for those who are 65 or turning 65 that year. This misinformation can lead people to make bad decisions, like not withholding enough taxes from their benefits or thinking they'll get a refund when they won't. Knowing the truth helps you avoid costly mistakes. When we break down the financial impact of this deduction, we see that it helps only a small portion of Americans. Low-income seniors who already pay little to no income tax are unlikely to see any real benefit because their taxable income is already low enough that an extra $6,000 deduction doesn't change anything. For wealthy retirees who often have multiple sources of income, like 401k and investment earnings, the deduction is also not impactful because they still face taxes on much of their income. The people who stand to gain the most are those in the middle ETH bracket, retirees who make just enough to pay taxes, but not so much that they're phased out of deductions. These are folks who may have modest pensions, some savings, and Social Security. For them, a $6,000 deduction could reduce their tax liability by a few $100s. It's helpful, but it's not groundbreaking. And once again, it's far from a full exemption from taxes on Social Security. Another fact that hasn't been widely discussed is that this deduction is temporary. It is only set to last for 3 years, after which it will expire unless extended by future legislation. This detail is crucial because many people are under the false impression that this tax change is permanent. It is not. And when 2028 rolls around, millions of seniors may be shocked to find out that they're once again paying the full tax burden on their benefits. This type of limited time benefit creates even more uncertainty for retirees who rely on predictable income to make ends meet. If you're budgeting based on this deduction and it goes away in a few years, that could mean a surprise tax bill down the road. What's even more frustrating is that this expiration date hasn't been clearly communicated by many lawmakers or in public statements. Seniors deserve to know the truth so they can plan their finances accurately. Let's contrast this short-term deduction with the 2017 tax cuts, which were passed during Trump's first term. Those cuts included large permanent tax breaks for corporations and the wealthiest individuals, benefits that continue today. In other words, the tax cuts for the top earners were built to last. While the modest help being offered to seniors is set to expire after only 3 years, this tells you a lot about priorities in the current tax policy. While working-class Americans and retirees are getting temporary and narrowly defined relief, the wealthiest Americans are benefiting from long-term structural tax changes. This imbalance is important to highlight because it shows how even policies marketed as help for the little guy often end up favoring those already at the top. If the government can make permanent tax breaks for billionaires, it should be able to make permanent relief for seniors too. President Trump has also claimed that there will be no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and a new deduction for interest on American-made car loans. While these ideas sound appealing, they also come with major caveats. For instance, the no tax on tips policy only applies up to $25,000 per person. Similarly, the no tax on overtime is capped at $12,500 per year. Once you go over those limits, taxes resume like normal, and when it comes to the car interest deduction, the rule only applies to vehicles made in America and only if you take out a loan to purchase them. It's a niche benefit that won't apply to many people. These policies are not as broad or impactful as they sound when first announced. They are tailored to very specific situations and often come with fine print that limits their usefulness. It's important to read between the lines when these promises are made. At this point, you may be wondering, why does Trump continue to make this claim if it's not true? The most likely answer is that it's a deliberate political strategy. By repeating a message enough times, people begin to believe it. Even if the facts don't match the claim, repetition can shape public perception. This is a well-known communication tactic in politics, and unfortunately, it can mislead millions of people who aren't reading the fine print. It's troubling to think that such misinformation is being used to gain political support, especially when it affects something as critical as retirement income. The more often people hear no tax on Social Security, the more they start to accept it as truth, even if it's completely inaccurate. That's why it's so important to speak up and share the facts, because staying silent allows the misinformation to spread unchecked. Another concerning aspect of this issue is the silence from other politicians. You would think that members of Congress or state officials would step in to clarify what's true and what's not, but many haven't. Whether it's because of political pressure or a fear of challenging leadership, this silence leaves millions of constituents confused. Seniors are calling their representatives with questions like, "Is it true there's no tax on Social Security now?" And many aren't getting the real answers they deserve. It's the responsibility of every lawmaker, regardless of party affiliation, to provide accurate information. When leaders refuse to correct false claims, they allow confusion to grow and make it harder for everyday Americans to trust what they hear. Seniors and low-information Americans depend on factual information to make financial decisions, and they deserve better than silence or half-truths from their elected officials. To wrap it up, let's be clear. There is still a tax on Social Security income for many Americans. The promise of a complete exemption is simply not true. What we got instead is a limited 3-year, $6,000 deduction that only benefits a narrow slice of the population. This isn't about politics. It's about making sure you know what's really in your wallet and how to plan for the future without being misled by headlines or speeches. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Social Security Post for more straight talk updates that matter to you. Got questions about Social Security, SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, or SNAP? Drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to get you clear answers fast. Stay informed, stay empowered, and I'll see you in the next one.